Well, welcome to another edition of Live Better. I am your host, Sharice Cross, and we have a great topic today, a great discussion that we're going to have today. I have our guest here from the Atlanta VA Medical Center, one of my favorite centers. I am also a veteran, U.S. Navy, go Navy, and I wanted to have this discussion today around mental health. Our veterans and our active duty members really do a service for our country. They sacrifice, and it takes a toll on them as well. So I want to thank you both, and I commend you both for first serving our veterans and the Atlanta VA Medical Center for serving our veterans, because there's a lot of work that goes on with that. So let me introduce you to our guests. We have Monique Hunter, Dr. Monique Hunter. She is the section chief of Psychosocial Rehabilitation Services at the VA Medical Center. So welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we have Miss Geraldine Levy. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and she is a director of Psychosocial Rehabilitation and Recovery Center, also called PRCC, because we love our acronyms.
Yes, PRRC.
PRRC. Okay. Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Like I said, we love our acronyms in the military, and there's plenty of them. So I'll tell you guys a lot of acronyms today. But I just wanted today to have this discussion around the military and mental health. We hear a lot of things on the internet. You see a lot of things in the news. But what we don't see is the great work and the strategic plans that the VA Medical Center has for our military. It's a large demographic, very large demographic. So again, I just thank you all for being here and serving this demographic. Yeah, how does it feel just working with this large demographic, and how did you get started?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I have been with the Atlanta VA for 15 years now. And I actually started my career with the VA as a trainee. So I did my internship at the VA in Chicago. It was the West Side VA, for those who are familiar with Chicago. And at the time, I was told that the VA is a great place to get training if you are interested in learning about mental health and mental illness. And so I wanted to learn, but I had no expectation that I would spend my career working with the VA. And I started there as a trainee, and I just fell in love with working with veterans and just found that it's such a rich experience. And I also was struck by the fact that working at the VA, we have the opportunity to provide mental health services for people who otherwise may not have access to those kinds of services, and just like the comprehensive array of care options that are available. And I just fell in love with it, and I've been with the VA ever since.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I feel the love. I feel the love. I feel it. So, Miss Levy, how did you get started with the VA?
Okay, well, I started with the VA probably about 8 years ago. I took a different route. I first started out working with family and children. So most of my career, the first half of my career, I was in family and child welfare. And then I decided that I wanted to do something different. I was interested in the mental health field. And I come from a family of veterans and saw some of the challenges that they were having and wanted to try to do something to make an impact in that area and in mental health and specific to veterans. So I started off working with the homeless population, and I have been doing working in psychosocial rehabilitation now for the last couple of years.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just love how, and if you've never been in the military, there are so many services that are offered for the military. And so that's why we're having this discussion today. This is just a tip of what is offered at the VA. Actually, And sometimes we know about it, sometimes we don't. So that's why we're here today. Specifically, we're talking about mental health and mental illness. Well, let's start off with that. What is mental health and what is mental illness? Because sometimes we use it interchangeably.
Yes, we do often use it interchangeably. I think a lot of times when people are talking about having mental health, what they are referring to is I'm having a concern related to my mental health, or it might be a mental illness. But if you think about it in terms of how we describe our physical health, so our physical health is the condition of our body, good, bad, or otherwise. So the things that are strengths for us, the things that are risk factors for us, aspects that we might need to improve on, those kinds of things. And that within the context of your physical health, there may be problems that you might see a doctor for or need to take medications for. And I think that if you look at it from that lens, then mental health versus mental illness tends to make more sense. So mental health would be the overarching condition of your mental state, which might be the same kinds of things. It might include your strengths, your challenges, your risk factors, protective factors, so those things that are working in your favor when it comes to your mental well-being, the degree to which you have things that are resilience factors or things that other people might view as strengths, as well as some of the challenges that might bring you to a doctor, a psychiatrist, psychologist, or social worker to seek care for what may be considered a mental illness or a mental health condition. And so usually when people are thinking about mental illness, they're thinking about things that tend to have a label associated with it. So a name like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression, those kinds of things. So I think that that's a distinction that can be helpful in trying to understand within the context of mental health, where does mental illness fit?
Thank you. That is so rich. Because I think, again, we combine everything together and we have experts like you who can kind of flesh it out for us. So how is mental illness treated?
Oh, that's a big one.
Right.
That is a big one. It really depends on the type of mental illness. So I'll say that first, just as a caveat, that there is no right or wrong way to treat most conditions. That there are many options associated with mental health conditions. So for most mental health conditions, there are a variety of evidence-supported options for treatment. And those can include things like medication management or pharmacotherapy for mental health conditions. It usually will also include evidence-supported psychotherapies that are appropriate for different types of mental illness, and that the types of therapies may differ from one condition to another. Usually when people are talking about therapy, we're referring to like talk therapy. So you go to a therapist's office, a psychologist, a social worker, a licensed professional counselor, and are participating in some sort of talk therapy that may include the development of new skills, for example, to work through some of the symptoms of a mental health condition. But I would say that, and there's within those broad categories, and there are others. There are a host of different therapeutic options that can be available based on the symptoms that the person is experiencing. But I will say this, that by and large, there are a couple of factors that are essential in determining whether or not a certain type of treatment is going to be helpful to someone. So one is, first of all, what will the individual agree to do? So if I have, if I'm going to a psychiatrist for depression and they're prescribing me a medication that has side effects that are unacceptable to me, it doesn't matter how well the medication works for somebody else, I'm not gonna take it. And so then that's not an appropriate therapy option for me. And so same thing with psychotherapies, that if there's a particular type of therapy or a type of treatment that is helpful for some people, but I can't agree to do it, or I don't have access to it.
Mhm.
I can't, you want me to come for weekly therapy appointments, but I don't have anybody to watch my kids, whatever, there are all kinds of barriers that may keep people from being able to access the services that really are effective for a treatment. But if I can't get to it, if I can't access it, it's not going to work for me. So that's kind of my first caveat is, what will somebody agree to do?
Mm-hmm.
Also, is what does the individual believe will be most helpful to them?
Mm-hmm.
And what fits within the individual's like conceptualization, how they understand their difficulties. And so, I always see mental health care ideally as a partnership, a collaboration between the provider and the client, to look at, well, within your understanding of what's going on with you, what is it that we can come up with together that will help you to feel like, I can do this, I can participate in this type of therapy, taking this medication, whatever, and that we can agree to work on these things together in that way.
How do you see those boarded up properties and eyesores in your local community?
Opportunity. This one NACA property propelled me, and now I have 8 outside of this one. So technically I have 9. I have 9 different, and I got into the space of a landlord, of a homeowner. So without NACA, it wouldn't be possible.
All right, let's try this.
COVID has been a really long fight, and it's been especially tough on kids.
It's been a rough transition for all of us.
Right now, as a father, I want to give the best tools to protect my kids.
So what can we do to get back to that sense of normalcy?
Many parents are asking if it is worth it to get their kids vaccinated against COVID.
The answer is absolutely yes.
My own sons, who are 6 and 8 years old, had their COVID vaccine.
It's an added layer of protection to keep kids from getting any type of severe illness or complications from a COVID infection.
A lot of parents are also wondering if the vaccines are safe.
Yes, it's safe and effective for children.
Definitely safer than a COVID infection.
Children get a smaller dosage than adults do.
So if you have questions or concerns about the vaccine, that's okay.
We're here to help.
We have the tools we need to protect kids and help them stay healthy, and all get through this together.
Oh, I don't know much R&B. I'm telling you that right now.
We at the part that I love, and y'all know what it is. It's called Church That Hook. We're going to give you a song that's not gospel, and we want you to take the hook of it or the piece that you know, and we want you to sing it to us how you would if you were at church. Boys to Men, End of the Road.
All right, I'm going to go back to my choir days. Although we come to the end of the road, still I can't let go. Say, it's a natural sopranos. I belong to you. You belong to me.
Yeah.
Talking, I was thinking about the barriers. One barrier being we're in this context right now of faith context, or even our belief system, our theology, and how that may be a barrier, or how does that play when it comes to mental health and mental illness?
I feel like you just hit me with these like heavy hitter questions. That's so it's so deep though, because that is particularly in the African American community, that is a very significant barrier to help seeking for many people. What I have heard over the years from people is some combination of, I'm worried about what having this mental health issue says about my faith.
Yes.
What does it mean that I've been praying and praying and praying, and these symptoms aren't going away? my family says that I need to do this thing or that thing, or all I need to do is pray about it and it'll get better, or my family is, or I have all of this judgment about why is this happening to me? Is this happening to me because I'm a bad person, because my faith isn't strong enough? Or what happens a lot actually is, I see faith coming into play when it comes to being able to have conversations with people about suicide as well. And, and the guilt that people experience, being able to reconcile, I'm having these thoughts, and this also is not part of my belief system. This is wrong. And, and so people warring with all of those kinds of things, it will affect their willingness to seek help or to let other people in their circle, their family, their friends, their, other people that they may come across, to let them know that I'm struggling right now, because there's a perception that they may be judged for it. What I encourage people to do is, particularly those of us that are in positions where we may be able to provide support to someone who is struggling with mental health issues, is to never underestimate the importance or the potential impact of a non-judgmental ear. And that, sometimes just being able to hear what somebody is struggling with and to not be quick to offer them a solution for it, whether that's, prayer, a spiritual solution, a natural solution, whatever, but just to hear that somebody is struggling and to be able to tolerate and sit with their suffering sometimes speaks volumes. And then I have found that people are more willing to listen to what you have to say if you will first just sit with them and listen.
That's so good. It's we call it the ministry of presence, or the gift of presence. Just sitting there, just being.
Yes.
We always want to fix it.
Right.
And we could just be.
Just be.
Just be, y'all. Just be, y'all.
We see that you founded something, an organization called Black Girls in Cyber.
So I started these Facebook Live series called Black Girls in Cyber, and I would invite different African-American women who were working in different aspects of the field to come and share their stories, very similar to as I'm doing now, and what their journey was, and to just really create more industry awareness around what this looks like.
An iMac computer, but you have a cell phone. Maybe you have an Apple cell phone. Leverage that to then create what you find important.
How do we make sure that our children, what they're learning, is positive?
Listen, this is going to be a rich topic. It already is a great discussion. We're talking about mental illness, but we're going to give you some resources. So I need you guys to tune in and share this with people so that they can see what's going on, because we got great information coming, such good information. This has been already so rich. So Ms. Levy,
yes,
how is it working in this field with mental health? How has it shifted your perception? I think we have perceptions as those in this helping profession, and then we're in it. How does it shape your perception?
Well, for me, it's really confirmed that you really have to start where the person is. And you start there, and a lot of times, as Dr. Hunter mentioned, just having a listening ear, a non-judgmental listening ear, can make a whole lot of difference. So when I first got into the field, I was always trying to, fix everybody and do all the things that I thought needed to be done for the particular person. But what I learned is that the person has to first, it's really more in their control than in my control. A lot of times it's them, having the desire to get better or, for recovery. And as long as you can instill some hope in someone and keep them encouraged, a lot of times that makes a whole lot of difference.
Come on, I love that. If we could just be there, instill hope. And listen with non-judgmental ears.
That's a big deal.
I love that. And like you said, I remember trying to fix everybody. Oh wait, the book said, yeah, you get in it. Yeah, you learn. So this is so good, so good. We've talked a little bit about what mental health is, but you both work in a specific area that deals with what we call serious mental illness. And could you kind of define what is that? What is serious mental illness?
Sure.
Dr. Hunter, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sure. Serious mental illness is a subset within, there are hundreds of diagnosable mental health conditions or mental illnesses, but only a certain number of them would rise to the level of being considered serious or persistent mental illnesses. And that is typically defined based on the level of functional impairment that those conditions cause. So, having a condition is one thing, but it is not just having the condition that wreaks havoc on people's lives. It is really about what is the impact of these symptoms on my life? Does it keep me from being able to function adaptively in my community? Am I able to interact with people in a way that is meets social conventions or expectations? Am I able to get out of bed in order to live my life? Am I able to do school and work and church and all these other kinds of expectations or demands that are typically placed on adults? And so within the broad category of mental illnesses, the conditions that most likely will result in serious and functional impairment or would be considered serious mental illness are typically schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders and bipolar disorder. Sometimes it can also include severe major depression. So major depression is, like many mental health conditions, has a very broad range of symptoms. So some people may experience mild symptoms where they have episodes of, not feeling well and, feeling like their depression is significantly impacting their ability to function. And then there are people whose depression is severely limiting. So people who may, experience vegetative states where they really just moving is difficult for them. And so, that's it's really about the range of functioning and how much your normal adult functions are impaired by your mental illness. And that's what determines whether it's serious or not.
Okay, thank you for describing major depressive disorder, because that needs to be said. Right now, we hear a lot of labels thrown out there, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm having a bipolar moment," and that makes me cringe every time. I just ooh. And then we have people who call people names to other them.
Yes.
When these are descriptors that we use as professionals, not to be othering people. So would you define first bipolar and then schizophrenia for us?
Okay, so bipolar disorder is considered a mood disorder. So it's a disruption of mood. And it is the key feature of bipolar disorder is discrete periods of either manic episodes or hypomanic episodes. So a manic episode would be a period of, of time where the person has high energy, decreased need for sleep. So they're not sleeping and they don't feel like they need to sleep. So not like insomnia, I'm tired and I want to go to sleep. Like they're days on end, no sleep, and they're just, revved. And, during that, there could be a period of like increased goal directed activity. So sometimes people will feel like they are, they're pressured to do things, projects or activities or things like that. But usually it can look frenzied to the person on the outside. It doesn't feel like that to the person on the inside, but on the outside, it's just like they're in a whirlwind, During that period, they may also experience things like some grandiosity or a pressured speech. So they're just coming at you a mile a minute, words, and it can feel like drinking from a fire hose, to a certain extent. Again, that's what it looks like for the people on the outside. That's not what it feels like to the person on the inside. So I mentioned that bipolar disorder, like the key feature is going to be the presence of at least one of those manic episodes. But it may be a slightly less intense version of that. And that would be what we would consider a hypomanic episode or mixed episodes where they're also experiencing some manic symptoms along with depression. So, we used to label bipolar disorder, we used to call it manic depression, and so a lot of people may be familiar with that term, manic depression. And that was really just to reflect the fact that this is a mental illness that features episodes of mania and also episodes of what would be considered major depressive episodes where they're experiencing the same kinds of depressive symptoms that we talked about before, not being able to get out of bed, feelings of hopelessness or helplessness and things like that. Sometimes people may experience those things like in very, fluctuations, but typically with bipolar disorder, there are periods where it's, I'm manic for a week, 2 weeks, then some time passes, a period of depression. I think that sometimes I'm glad you mentioned about how loosely we throw around labels. I think that is one that that really gets to me, just because I think a lot of times when people are talking about having mood swings, quote unquote, what they're talking about is I'm fluctuating. Sometimes I'm mad. Sometimes I'm this. Sometimes I'm sad. But we all experience fluctuations in mood. You're supposed to. And so when we do that and, talk about people as being bipolar because they have fluctuations in moods, I think that, first of all, it minimizes the impact of, severe mental illness because it makes it sound like it's just a cavalier thing that you just throw out, loosely, when in fact, bipolar disorder can be a very, very debilitating condition for the people that are experiencing it and for their loved ones. Like that is one of the conditions that, honestly, when people are not medicated and not in consistent mental health care, it just can destroy lives. And so it is a bit of a sticking point for me to hear people kind of throw it out there and make it seem like it's not a big deal. It is a very big deal.
Absolutely.
And so then you also asked about schizophrenia. So that's another one that I think people throw around too loosely and use to describe people whose behavior they find to be odd or unpredictable or erratic in some way. Schizophrenia is considered to be a psychotic disorder. The key features of psychotic disorders is that these are conditions that have that include like a substantial break from reality. And so the hallmarks of schizophrenia would be hallucinations, which can be like a disruption in your sensory perception. So that can be pretty much any sense, but typically people are experiencing auditory hallucinations. So I'm hearing things, I hear voices, I hear knocking, I hear sounds that aren't there. And then visual hallucinations, so seeing things that aren't there as well. And so, but there are other symptoms of schizophrenia, but those are the ones that I think people might most readily identify with. And that it can be, you know, I try to exercise some compassion about when people are uncomfortable when someone is experiencing mental health symptoms, because it can be alarming if you've never been around someone who's experiencing these symptoms, and their behavior may be unpredictable. But I also encourage people to inform themselves so that they are able to help get people into care that they need if they are experiencing some of those symptoms.
Thank you. This is so educational. I hope you all got that, because it's very, it's a difference. And these are not terms that we should just throw out. And I hope that you were educated on what they are, because it's important, very important, that we distinguish moods and behaviors from really dealing with disorders that are very, very serious. Another one I was just thinking about that we use, and it's broad, but it is something I think that's impacted a lot of people, though, even during the pandemic, was anxiety. Just anxiety. Just speak on anxiety, and then we're gonna move on.
Okay. I feel like I owe you an apology just because I can talk at length.
Listen, you're doing great. You're doing great.
But so anxiety is another one of those normal experiences that can become problematic or disordered. We all experience anxiety from time to time. It's normal. It's actually helpful.
Yes.
So, you know, if you think about, if you don't feel anxious about paying your bills, then you might not go to work. You might not, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that you do out of anxiety, you know, but it becomes disordered when your anxiety rises to a level where it impairs your ability to function. So you become so anxious, so worried about these kinds of things that it actually has the opposite effect and keeps you from being able to do things like go out in public or go take care of responsibilities, go, you know, there's all kinds of specific types of anxiety that people might experience, like, you know, I'm anxious around crowds, or I'm anxious in these types of settings, but it can also be very generalized, where people are experiencing anxiety that's, you know, is not limited to a particular type of setting or situation. I don't know of anybody who didn't experience an increase in anxiety over the last couple of years. And, you know, some to a pathological degree, like some to a degree that even beyond what is, you know, healthful in terms of, you know, protecting yourselves or getting vaccinated or wearing masks or washing your hands or whatever, like that, it is debilitating. So it has paralyzed them. And, you know, and that is heartbreaking, because it is very difficult to break out of the avoidance that people experience when they start to have excessive anxiety around things. So for anybody that's had an increase in anxiety during the last couple of years, you're not alone. I would encourage you to talk to somebody and to seek some help. There are resources available. We'll share some resources at the end of our conversation. But just know that it's not just you, but you know, there are people that can help you work through that anxiety as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Listen, you all, we have just gotten to the tip, like I said, the tip of our conversation. We're going to come back for part 2. We've given you a lot of information about what mental health is, mental illness is, and now we want to give you some resources. Well, we're going to come back and give you some resources. So we need you to tune in next week. Tune in next week to watch and see and get these great resources that we have to offer. So we thank you for being here. Thank you, Dr. Hunter.
Thank you.
For explaining and educating us, because we need it. Education helps. And we thank you, Ms. Levy, for coming here and sharing with us. We're going to hear more from you in part 2. Come on, I'm rhyming, y'all. Listen, share this if you didn't share it. Let us know what you thought. Give us some comments out there. Give us some likes. And we'll see you back again here for Live Better, part 2, dealing with mental health. And we're talking about mental health, dealing with veterans. So we'll see you again here for part 2.